Hoorah, Marines, this is Captain Jaworski, and this will be your rifle platoon in the defense class. Up until this point in the POI, and throughout most of your career so far, offensive operations has been the primary focus of your training, especially here at TBS with FX1 and PEX. But as you look at those pictures, from the Great Wall of China to Pickett's Charge, the Western Front, and then World War II and up into the modern day, the defense has always been a part of war. It occupies a key place in our doctrine for that reason. There exists no clear division between the offense and defense. The offense and defense exist simultaneously as necessary components of each other. The transition from one to the other is fluid and continuous. Think about at the end of FX1 attack, going into the hasty 180 and consolidated 360. There's no clear break, at least not if we're doing it well. As the attack ends, we flow directly into the defense and then flow right on out again into the offense. There is a little bit more to it, however, than just a hasty 180 or consolidated 360. And that's what we'll be that's what we'll be talking about today. So we'll be going over the characteristics of the defense, talking about preparing to fight the defense, the execution of the defense, and then in a separate video, Sergeant Charlie has a presentation on the management of defensive operations. So first, let's define the defense. A coordinated effort by a force to defeat an attack by an opposing force and prevent it from achieving its objectives. I want to draw your attention to two parts of this definition. First, it's a coordinated effort. When you go and listen to a piece of music, when you go to a concert, you don't first hear the guitar play, and then the drums play, and then the bass play. You hear one song. When you are planning a defensive operation or conducting a defensive operation, you need to think of yourself as that conductor. You're coordinating all the different pieces, your direct fire plan, your indirect fire plan, and your obstacle plan to create one seamless piece of music. For the second part of the definition, let's look at and prevent it being the opposing force, from achieving its objectives. Think back to the attack planning TDG. There was that convoy coming through the pass, limited amount of time to plan, and we needed to stop them from getting to Corbett. There was a bunch of different ways we could have accomplished that objective. We didn't have to kill every single enemy that came through there in order to be successful. With that in mind, let's look at some tactical tasks we might receive along with commander's intent that will shape our defensive planning. Like with the offense, we can be tasked to conduct enemy-friendly or terrain-oriented tasks. Enemy-oriented task is obviously focused on the enemy, to deny them from doing something in this case, using terrain, space, personnel, facility. If we're thinking friendly-oriented tasks like protect, look at the definition of protect there. To prevent even observation by engagement with or interference from. That's a significant amount of resistance that we need to offer. And then look at the difference between that and to retain. Retain, to occupy and hold a terrain feature. If I'm retaining a piece of terrain, I can be on it and fighting, but if I was tasked to protect that piece of terrain or protect a friendly unit on that piece of terrain, the enemy shouldn't even be able to observe it. And if I was tasked to deny the enemy the use of a piece of terrain, again, a different level of resistance, perhaps a different type of defense or method of defensive operation would be required. So let's take a look at types and methods of defensive operations. There are three types: the mobile defense, the retrograde, and the area defense. The mobile defense is for large units. You need about a regiment or higher, really, to be able to conduct a true mobile defense. There's some form of striking force, the main effort, and the supporting efforts are going to be spread across a large area. And when the enemy's main thrust is attrited or culminating, then we commit our main striking force. You may be a part of a mobile defense as a platoon commander, but you will not be conducting a mobile defense, at least not with just your platoon. For retrograde, think of the picture in there, and the Marines retrograde from the Chosin Reservoir. It was an organized movement in contact with the enemy in order to prevent any kind of pursuit or exploitation by the enemy against our force. The area defense is the one that you're probably thinking of, or what first comes to mind when you think of defensive operations. Denying access to designated terrain or infrastructure for a specified time. And there are multiple methods of which we can accomplish an area defense. So since this is the most likely one that you will do as a platoon commander, let's take a look at those methods. So the area type defensive methods are perimeter, strong point, battle position, sector, reverse slope, and linear. We're going to go in depth on perimeter, strong point, and battle position because those are the most common ones you'll see at the platoon level. But a sector defense, that's when a commander assigns their subordinate commander some pretty significant latitude. This is your sector, defend it as you see fit. So you may be a part of a company sector defense and choose to use a battle position or reverse slope in your particular sector. For a reverse slope, in a reverse slope defense, they orient in a single direction, and they're using a portion of the terrain feature or slope with a topographical crest that masks the main defensive position from enemy observation and direct fire. All or part of the defending ground force may employ this method, which is normally applicable primarily at lower tactical levels due to terrain considerations. Reverse slopes are commonly used when the unit defending has a significant disadvantage compared to the unit that's in the assault. So if you are significantly outnumbered and you want to leverage surprise, or if the enemy has significant supporting arms capabilities and you want to let them get in close before they can leverage those against you. Finally, with a linear method, a linear defense orients in a single direction to take advantage of a linear terrain feature, such as a riverline or a ridge, or when a wide area must be defended. It is characterized by the commitment of the preponderance of ground combat forces forward, strong mutual support between forward units, limited depth within the main battle area, and a relatively small reserve. So you may be a part of a company linear defense in your battle position, but linear defense is what you think of. Unit online on a terrain feature, ready to repel the enemy. Let's take a little bit closer look at perimeter, strong point, and battle position, however, as these are the three most likely ones that you're going to counter as a platoon commander. For a perimeter defense, you've already done one. The consolidated 360, oriented in all directions, occupied hastily. If we're going to be there for a little bit of time, maybe we have some patrolling or security operations we're operating out of there. We're usually most likely tasked with a friendly or terrain-oriented task. If we're protecting a radar site like in the picture, or there's a assembly area that we have been tasked as a security force for, if we're conducting a platoon patrol base somewhere. But again, you've already done one of these 360, hasty, oriented in all directions, making sure that we don't get a surprise from any way where we're not looking. A strong point defense is the same as a perimeter defense, but with more assets and support. So if you've ever seen pictures of combat outposts or forward operating bases in Iraq or Afghanistan over the past several years, you see the HESCO bunkers with guard towers and blast walls. Those are strong point defenses. They're organized for all-around defense, but they have some form of combat service support and logistics and footprint that make them much more established than just a hasty perimeter defense. They also usually have some form of mobile reserve, like a quick reaction force to help with their security efforts. The final common defensive method is the battle position method. So most likely given an enemy-oriented task, deny or delay, block, oriented on an enemy avenue of approach. It can be hasty or deliberate, but one thing that we're going to see here is, throughout this whole class, is continuous improvements. A battle position that starts as just hasty Marines on a ridgeline behind their main packs can turn into chest-deep fighting positions with grenade sumps and overhead cover in just a couple of hours or a couple of days. One thing I would like to point out with the battle position that students get wrong often is the ops terms and graphic for it. So here we have the enemy coming from the top of the screen. So the unit that is in the battle position is depicted by the size designator at the bottom or on the rear of the op terms and graphic. So the unbroken side of the ellipse, this is the way that the battle position is oriented, as we see where we have this platoon battle position and then the 3 smaller squad positions inside, and then our platoon CP. So I just wanted to take the time and point out the actual op terms of graphic for this, as students often get it wrong when they're either depicting their own battle position or they're looking in a TDG or something, looking at a tactical scenario, and then it messes with their planning because they think it's oriented the wrong way. Regardless of what method of defensive position or even what type of defensive position you use, there's some underlying characteristics of the defense that are common to all types of methods. You're never going to perfectly have all 10 of them together. But as long as you know what they are, you can leverage them to better cover for weaknesses in one area or play up strengths in another. The main ones I want to draw your attention to are preparation, flexibility, and defense in depth. You're going to hear the instructors talk about these 3 characteristics a lot over the next couple of months. For preparation, you can't win a defensive operation in preparation, but you certainly can lose it. If we don't have a good plan for how we're going to use our most precious asset, which is our time to prepare, things aren't going to go well for us in execution. Additionally, if we don't do a good estimate of the situation and don't put some critical thought into where our defenses should be or what method we should use, it doesn't help us if we set up with the most perfect defense on the wrong avenue of approach and the enemy just bypasses us. Which is why we need some flexibility, because even if we have a great plan, the enemy still gets a vote. So while we need to make sure that we have mass and concentration in the engagement area that we choose, we have to build in some flexibility to our plan so we can handle a shock or an unexpected enemy scheme maneuver. And finally, with defense in depth, we don't just want to be a thin sheet of ice that the enemy can punch through at any spot. We want them to be attrited throughout the battle area, so when they finally culminate in the center of our engagement area, we've got them right where we want them, and we can destroy them with the mass effects of our fires, of our indirect fire, direct fire, and our obstacle plan. So let's test out these characteristics and conduct a little TDG. There's a TDG map hung on Moodle in this week's folder along with this video. Let's take a look at it. Situation. ISR identified an MRA platoon reported 10 kilometers southwest of Kansas City. Intel suggests they are trying to reinforce their company position northeast of Kansas City. First platoon has been tasked with establishing a blocking position south of Kansas City in vicinity of the bridge. Mission. Third platoon, you are the company's main effort. No later than 12:30, block southwest of Kansas City in the vicinity of Long Branch Creek in order to prevent the enemy from interfering with the battalion main effort's attack to the northeast of Kansas City. I say again, third platoon, you are the company's main effort. No later than 12:30, block southwest of Kansas City in the vicinity of Long Branch Creek in order to prevent the enemy from interfering with the battalion main effort's attack to the northeast of Kansas City. Your area of operations is the area depicted on your map southwest of Kansas City. You have 1 medium machine gun squad attached, and you have 1 81mm mortar section in direct support, and you are first in the priority of fire. So what I'd like you to do now is take 10 minutes. I need you to come up with your MLCOA and your scheme maneuver. So I need you to depict your squad battle positions, where you want to put those medium machine guns, any control measures you want to use, the sectors of fire of your units, and I'm giving you 3 indirect fire targets in support of your defense. So at this time, please stop the recording, time yourself, taking 10 minutes to do the TDG. And again, this map chip is located on Moodle titled Platoon Defense Platform TDG Map. Please stop the recording now. Welcome back. So what did you choose to do? We've got 2 hills in the sector here, nice draw in the middle, some perennial stream coming through, a little intermittent stream coming off the draw, and some thick vegetation. What does your map look like? Does it look anything like this? That's a whole lot, right? By the end of this class, this is what we're looking to create when we're creating a defensive scheme maneuver. It is a whole bunch of things, but we're going to break it down step by step and walk through it. The key to a defensive operation down at the tactical level is the engagement area. So what is the engagement area? The EA, or engagement area, is where the company commander intends to contain or finish the enemy force using the mass fires of all available weapons. And that applies to you as the platoon commander as well. So throughout the POI so far, and when you've asked specific questions of how do I do this, you've most likely gotten, well, the situation is going to dictate from the captain or the sergeant who's instructing you, right? The good news about engagement area development is there are steps that we can follow. And they're tied into a process that we've already seen before in the POI. So first, we need to identify all likely enemy avenues of approach. What does that sound like, where we look at all the factors in a situation? And we conduct our estimate of the situation. That's right, MET-TC. The same thing we've already been taught to do in the TAC planning process. Because next, we need to determine the likely enemy scheme maneuver. What are they going to do in our sector? Sound familiar to the TAC planning process? It's the MLCOA. Once we've considered the whole situation and the MLCOA, now we're going to figure out where we're going to kill the enemy. What's the next step in the TAC planning process? Figuring out our CG/CV exploitation plan. How are we going to gain an advantage on the enemy and destroy them? From there, now we move into our friendly specific planning. So we emplace our weapon systems, our direct fire planning. We plan to integrate obstacles. We plan to integrate indirect fires, both the ones that we have organic to us and non-organic. What does that sound like? Our friendly scheme of maneuver. We've looked at the whole situation, looked at the MLCOA, come up with how we're going to gain advantage on the enemy, and all of that is just going to drive our planning the same way it does for an offensive operation. The TAC planning process is unchanged. And finally, the seventh step of engagement area development, we're going to conduct rehearsals. What does that sound like? The most important step of BAMSIS, supervise. So now that we've gone over the steps, let's build that engagement area that we saw together. So here's our defensive sector. Let's start planning our engagement area. So step one, identify all likely enemy avenues of approach. So this is our MET-TC, estimate of the situation. What's the terrain like? What's the enemy force like? What are our friendly capabilities? How could they get through our sector and accomplish their mission? They have a couple different ways they could go. We've got that perennial stream as a good guiding feature. There's the draw between the two hills in the center of the map chip. And then there's some wooded terrain kind of to the periphery. That will bring us to our second step. Determine the likely enemy scheme of maneuver. So there's going to be a couple different possible enemy avenues of approach, but you need to remember the old quote of he who defends everywhere defends nowhere. Just like anything else, we got to think, what's the enemy like? What are they going to do? What's their mission? What are they doing currently? What are they likely to do on contact? If I was the enemy, what would I do? So looking at our map, we've got that perennial stream as a good guiding feature that leads right into a draw, a main avenue of approach out in the tree line up into Cannon City. If the enemy were to take that, they have a good assault position with which they can use that hill masking to let them maneuver into Cannon City. And then that last good terrain feature depicted with the support by fire graphic, they could use to support their maneuver up into Cannon City. So now that we've determined their likely enemy scheme maneuver, most likely come up through the center of that draw, try to use that terrain to let them pop right into the center of the city, we go into step 3. Our King Leonidas moment. This is where we fight, this is where they die. Determine where to kill the enemy. So this is going to be engaging area Reaper. And this is where we're going to see our success. Which brings us into step 4, beginning of our friendly planning and placing our weapon systems, our direct fire plan. So we're going to establish our sectors of fire, place our automatic weapons, and let's talk a little bit about tactical control measures we'll use for our direct fire plan. So with our sectors of fire, we'll have the whole platoon sector, that's the engagement area, but every squad's not going to be able to cover the entire thing. So we're going to need to divide it up to ensure that we're massing fires into the key points of the engagement area where we want them. From placing our automatic weapons, we have not received your formal machine gun instruction yet, but I've given them to you in this scenario so that we think deliberately about where we're going to put some of the biggest casualty producing assets that we have down at the tactical level. We're going to use a principal direction of fire, a final protective line. How are we going to tie them in with the obstacle plan and the indirect fire plan that will come later? And finally, how are we going to control these things? So we talked about target reference points in the offense. We can use them in the defense as well. And then critically, you can use trigger lines, of which have engagement criteria and target precedence, to be that conductor, to give everyone a sheet of music to play off of in their own fighting hole, so that the whole defense becomes one coordinated effort. And lastly, we have a couple different types of defensive positions we can use inside of our overall platoon battle position. So let's go back to the map and take a look at what step 4 looks like. So we establish our sectors of fire. So again, why do we do it? We're translating the concept of the engagement area as a whole into manageable portions for small unit leaders to control. What's the smallest unit that gets a sector of fire? That's right, the fire team. And why is that? Think about all the people we've got in the defense. If we were to give everybody a sector, we would have to have every single person on security in order to completely cover our engagement area. With just a fire team as being the lowest level we go, one Marine can cover that fire team sector while the other 3 rest, perform priorities of work, go on patrol, accomplish whatever we need them to do. As we'll see in the second half of this with Sergeant Charnley in management of defensive operations, time and labor power is one of our most precious resources in the defense, and we don't want to squander it. And so going down to the fire team level allows us to accomplish concurrent actions. So in this position, which one of these 3 squads do you think is our main effort? It's most likely that center squad. They're looking at this main portion of our engagement area, and we have overlapping sectors of fire between the main effort and the supporting efforts. So what characteristics of the defense are we trying to maximize when we establish these sectors of fire? Mutual support, mass and concentration, and then depending on how far out they can see, they can contribute a little bit to defense in depth too. So if the main effort's in that center spot there, where we want to put our command post? That's right, behind the main effort where they can see the engagement area. You as the platoon commander, you have to be able to see the engagement area. Another critical thing you're going to have to be able to see is your subordinates. Think about how much you were running around during FEX 1 as a billet holder. You're not going to be able to do that when the enemy's support by fire and preparatory fires are peppering your defensive position. So wherever you place that command post, you have to be able to command from it. So you're going to have to be able to see the engagement area and be able to influence friendly actions. Another key position that you're going to want to spend some time in placing, with some thought in placing, is going to be your automatic weapons. So we're going to give our automatic weapons, in this case, principal directions of fire, oriented along a likely enemy avenue of approach, so that we can mass firepower into the face of the enemy and cause them to culminate in our engagement. Now, just because we gave these 2 guns PDFs, or principal directions of fire, doesn't mean that they can't engage other targets. But we're going to want to provide a little bit more control over how all of this direct fire plan works because you're not going to be in that fighting hole with that machine gunner telling them which targets to engage. We do that in the preparation phase in the order, and we enforce it with some tactical control measures. One of the key tactical control measures here in the defense is target reference points, just like in the offense. So again, this isn't a target in itself. It is a identifiable terrain feature that we can use to initiate, distribute, and control fires. Critically, it helps us communicate in the defense. Let's take a look at this enemy squad. So they're out there, a Marine sees them out in the engagement area. How are they going to communicate where they are quickly to other members of the defense? We could say, oh, they're out over at the edge of the tree line at the base of the northern hill, coming, 50 meters or so from the river. Not very succinct, is it? We can identify some target reference points and then go out and mark those target reference points to better facilitate decentralized execution of the engagement area. So TRP1, as we saw, that could be where the river comes out of the edge of the tree line. TRP2 is the fork in the river. And TRP3 is the beginning of the left-hand side or the southern side of the tree line. So these are just terrain features we can pick out, but we can then go out and mark them to, one, be able to see them at night, and two, provide a better talk on and more identifiable features to the Marines in the battle position. So now, when that enemy squad pops up, there's no confusion. Enemy squad located 50 meters west of TRP3. Clear, concise, succinct, and everyone knows exactly where that enemy squad is, because we all know where TRP3 is, so even if it's not in our sector, we know what's going on in the battlefield. So target reference points can help tell us where the enemy is in the engaging area, but it still doesn't tell the Marine when to shoot or when to engage. For that, we can use trigger lines. So these are a type of phase line that we use in the defense to help facilitate that decentralized execution in the engagement area. So here we've got trigger lines of red, white, and blue out at the edge of our engagement area, tied to some engagement criteria, letting the Marines know that depending on what weapon system they have, engage at this trigger line. So what does that sound like? The engagement criteria, that is the when to shoot. So for example, when the enemy crosses trigger line red, M249s will commence firing at a sustained rate. So the enemy's coming across trigger line red. I have an M249. I know it's time to start firing sustained rate. Who do I shoot? That's where target precedence comes in. Depending on the precedence, you start with the first in priority and work your way down as you work your way through that belt. So at trigger line red, target precedence for M249s is machine gun teams, clusters of fire team sized elements or larger, and C2 nodes. Now I know what to shoot and I know when to shoot. Again, you can't be in every fighting hole, and you're not going to be able to move around very much once the defensive position starts. So you need to be at the head of the orchestra making that music. This is what engagement criteria and target precedence sounds like. It sounds like decentralized execution. All the Marines know in their holes when and what they're supposed to shoot. So creating engagement criteria and target precedence, that's part of the preparation characteristic that we want to make sure we at least think about before we step into the tree line and issue in our order. But how do we build some flexibility into a static defensive position? We do that with the different types of positions in the overall platoon battle position. So the primary positions, these are the ones where we're best set up to accomplish our mission. We've done our analysis of the enemy, of the MLCOA, and these are our primary positions. So I've got our primary positions are in black. I'm putting a little P on them with the marker here. Those are our primary positions. Our alternate positions, we occupy those when the primary position is compromised. So think of the primary position and the alternate positions have the same mission statement. We're accomplishing the same thing. So here, our alternate positions are behind our primary positions in this particular case, so that if the enemy sees us and registers some IDF target that's effective on our primary positions, we can fall back to our alternate positions and be out of the ECR of the enemy's asset. For our supplementary positions, think back to those first couple steps of engaging area development, especially specifically that first one. We looked at all of the enemy avenues of approach, and then we picked the most likely one. But the enemy may choose to do something else. So our supplementary positions are to counter unexpected enemy scheme maneuvers and protect our flanks. So we have them here, our supplementary positions. So the three types of positions within the overall battle position are how we build in that flexibility, even though we are in a static position.